Do you know what I find interesting about the conflict in Ukraine? Is how polarized people are on the internet, especially those who aren't in Ukraine. Like, you go on YouTube, and you will find channels that are 100% pro-Russia. And you're clicking on it, and it's like, the green t-shirt has failed yet again. This shows the absolute incompetence of the Ukrainian military as well as the Western command. Why would he ever go into Russia except to make a PR for the green t-shirt? My friend, I am telling you that in a couple of days, this war will be over. That's one type of channel, and the other type of channel is like, Russia is in complete disarray over the sanctions that the West has imposed. Now we are seeing the complete destruction of the Russian economy. In 3 days, the Ukrainian forces will arrive in Moscow. Like, are there any, like, moderate channels, at least pretending to cover this from an objective point of view? It's like watching a football match, and honestly, I find it extremely disgusting because everyone forgets the fact that there's human lives at risk here. Like, how many people died from this war? Is it like over 1 million yet? I think like it's over 1 million. Like, can you imagine the horror if you happen to live in Russia or Ukraine and you get drafted? Like, you don't have any say in it. Like, they literally take you, they put you in a car, and then they send you on a front, and you get blown up by a drone, and then the footage gets to be uploaded on Twitter with heavy metal music while everyone is clicking like and retweeting. That's pretty much like how the conflict is, and it's really disturbing, But maybe I'm a little bit more sensitive than other people. I don't know. The thing is, though, the European Union is yet again forgetting its place in the world. And when you look at the European Union, this is what I've been saying all along. It's like the leadership of the state has pushed for so much bureaucracy, have embraced the environmentalist cult, has pushed for so much taxation, and they literally despise, it seems, the entrepreneurial spirit, to the point where we get our AI from the Americans. Because you can't make AI in the European Union. Like, the European Union is the first country on earth that regulated AI, to the point where I personally cannot enjoy an AI that makes videos because it goes against the EU law. Now, of course, I can install a VPN, but it's the idea, like, why can't we create our own AI? So we get AI from the Americans. We get our social media from the Americans. We get our military from the Americans, and by the way, that's actually a good thing, because when Europe had its own military, we had 2 world wars that dragged the entire globe into the conflict. And so maybe it's actually a good thing that, instead of trying to have, like, the nation states build up their military to compete with each other, it's actually better if the Americans have their say in this. But the manufacturing, it comes from China. When it comes to the energy sector, we took gas from Russia. And so, like, what exactly do we do? What exactly is it that we contribute? And if you don't contribute with anything, then you don't have a seat at the table. Simply contributing with bureaucracy and simply, like, claiming that you're tough shit, that you're the center of civilization and art. Dude, you're a museum. Like, I'm sorry to say this, but, like, the global players right now seem to be China, the United States, and then some smaller nation on certain categories, like when it comes to chip manufacturing, it's Taiwan, and then you have Israel with other things, and Japan. Those are the nations that matter, and the nations that actually get to have a say in things because they produce concrete things. But when it comes to the European Union, like, what does it produce? It produces censorship, propaganda, hubris, bureaucracy, more bureaucracy, and now it's basically shocked that it's being used as a pawn in the international conflicts, and they're not considered as having a seat on the table. Like, I'm sorry, the size of the country that you have, the size of territory that you occupy, doesn't mean shit. What do you have to strong arm the Americans? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The Americans have a lot of things to strong arm us. Oh my goodness. Like, again, they can threaten to withdraw from NATO. They can shut our social media. They can take us off the internet. They can use their dollar against it. Like the Americans can set tariffs. Like they can do a lot of things. In fact, the blowing up of the German pipeline, the Nord Stream 2. I know what the official narrative is, but my personal opinion is that without the blessings of the United States, that wouldn't have happened. And so that's it. Like, we're a vassal to the United States. I gotta say, I'm not that upset about it. I would rather be a vassal to the United States than a vassal to Germany. Like, Romania is a small country. It's always going to be under the sphere of influence of a larger nation. Historically speaking, like, the United States has actually been a more friend to Romania than the other possibilities. The other possibilities being the Ottoman Empire, the Russians under the Soviet Union, the Germans. Like, all the other quote-unquote friends weren't as nice as the Americans. With all things considered, by the way. Because, like, there is no relationship that's only positive. Right? With all the negatives and all of that, I definitely think, and you can ask most Romanians, like, historically speaking, right? Like, name me someone better than the Americans. Would you say that the Ottoman Empire treated us better? Would you say that the Soviet Union treated us better? And so, this is the situation that the EU is in now, and they're finding out that they're not invited to the negotiations with the war in Ukraine. Now, the war in Ukraine, you had the propaganda for the masses, like the conversation that's at the kids' table, the way that Kamala Harris likes to put it. Ukraine, small country, Russia, big country, Russia invades little country, we need to help little country. Like, that's the narrative for the kids' table. The grown-ups table, the conversation was a little bit different. The conversation was, we need to bog down Russia in Ukraine so that, if they went in there, like, let's keep them there. So that they waste their manpower, so that they waste their economy, so that they're wasting their people, their citizens in a conflict, while we do other things internationally, like, for instance, take Syria. Again, you go on Twitter, and a lot of people say that the United States has lost the war. Interesting. Well, Russia seems to have lost Syria. The United States seems to have secured a huge deal in the rare earth minerals that are in Ukraine, so they don't have to go to China to ask. And I'm pretty sure, like, there may be other deals and considerations that will go there. Plus, like, all of the grift that can be done with the reconstruction and all of that. I remember, like, a politician from the United States, Don Crenshaw. And he was on TV and he said something that's very unpalatable for the American people, and that was the fact that, the reason we're supporting the war is because we don't, like, it's better if American soldiers don't die. In other words, he's basically explaining how, like, yeah, it's good if we cause attrition for the Russians, and we use the Ukrainians to do it. We just give them weapons, we can test the technology. And by the way, like, the war in Ukraine was also for the weapons manufacturers to test technology, to see how the weapons operate, so on and so forth. And so, like, that's literally what the American high elites are considering with the war, right? Like, keep it as long as possible. I don't think they wanted Russia to win, but I don't think, like, they were excited about Ukraine winning. Just prolong it. As long as it's possible, like, turn it into a forever war, and just constantly have it going, so that Russia causes attrition, and as I mentioned before, you can then take other objectives on the map, such as Syria. For the European Union, the reason that this war is actually better than they think is that in the situation where the Ukrainians wouldn't have put up a resistance, like, let's see what happens. Russia already took Crimea, and there were repercussions only in writing, but not anything concrete. Like you don't notice that, like, Russia actually got punished for taking Crimea. And so they got emboldened, and then they started trying to take Ukraine. It's not, like, just like Russia doesn't want NATO as a member, so do other nations don't want Russia as a member. Like, this is a topic that's very uncomfortable for people to have. It's, the way they frame it is like, why is NATO approaching Russia? When the real question should be, why are so many nations desperate to go into NATO? Like, what the fuck has Russia done in its history? Why are they so bad at geopolitical diplomacy and gathering goodwill from its neighbors? Like, do you see Canada or Mexico wanting to join a military alliance with China? Because for some reason, when America did its shit, it did it somewhere else. It fucked it in someone else's neighborhood. Like, America didn't fuck stuff in their neighborhood. They're not upsetting Canada to the level where Canada is thinking about joining a Chinese alliance against the United States. They're not upsetting Mexico to that level. But look at the neighbors from Russia. All of them are pissed off at it. Like, historically speaking, going like way before the Soviet Union, like even since the Russian czars, they had really poor relationships with their neighbors. And this is why like all these nations are joining NATO and all these nations are afraid of Russia. Because as far as I know, from the history that I've been told, and it seems to be true, almost every single deal that Romania has signed with Russia ended up with Russia breaking it. Historically speaking, like without exception. And so like when you're in this geographical position, it's not about ideology, it's not about, like you pick and choose, it's pretty much... It's like Russia is attacking Ukraine. How can the government support it? And by the way, this is pretty much how most Romanians think. And it's also how Polish people think. The only ones that don't think like this are probably the Hungarians. Because again, it's the geographical nature in where you're at. And because the Hungarians don't have gas, they need to take it from the Russians. So like they don't, again, like they don't have a choice. It's the geography. But it seems that the war is going to most likely come from an end, and I think it's because of the speech that Donald Trump gave. Because up until now, it was Russia bad, we need to ban everything, including cat breeders from cat competitions, Twitch streamers that are Russians, like completely deplatform Russia from everything, even if it makes sense or not, like chess players shouldn't be able to play chess, complete madness. Like, I've never seen such liberal hatred than I saw when the war in Ukraine happened, because like they went after like Russian citizens that lived in America. Like, the fuck did they have to do with it? But like, people were absolutely insane. And so it seems that America may be satisfied with the conflict, right? And this is what they got. Apparently, like they're getting those rare earth minerals that Trump talked with Zelensky. They're getting they got their attrition with Russia, right? Like, they set Russia back. Their economy is now on a war footing. It's going to be very difficult for them to transition back, and without help, they may actually experience huge poverty. Because I think like the whole plan was to make sure that you don't get the China-Russian alliance, because that's pretty much like the only thing that can stop American hegemony. Like, if Russia and China were to ally, the two would be able to manage to keep the United States in check. Not through war, but through economy, through manufacturing, through a lot of other things. And I think like this is what happened. I don't think that the United States necessarily wanted to go to war with Russia, but if Russia invaded in Ukraine and the Ukrainians resisted, they went, well, fuck it, might as well. And so this may actually come to an end, because I heard Trump's speech saying, we need to show respect to Russia. I don't know exactly how he framed it, but basically saying like the people of Russia are very nice, people of America are nice too, we need to work together. In other words, it may seem that the Cold War will be over. And so the European Union is livid because they're not invited at the talking points, at the table, right? But like, I'm sorry, the European Union is fucking delusional. Like, at the end of the day, the situation on the ground, like the ground forces, where they are, how much money can they be sent, what is the manpower, right? Like, that actually matters more than any ideology. Because they're like, oh yes, we need to strengthen Ukraine. Like, okay, you need to. But how? Like look at, this was known since day one, right? Like, look at the you're fighting a war of attrition, right? Like, in a war of attrition, the only two things that matter is the artillery ammunition and the number of people you have in total. Right? Like, the number of soldiers that you can mobilize. And you look at the number of people in Russia compared to the number of people in Ukraine. Like, Russia has vastly superior numbers. And then you look at the artillery shells. Russia hasn't decommissioned most of its artillery shells factories since World War II. The European Union was struggling to keep up with the demand, and now they also, like, NATO also has conflicts in the Middle East and other places, and so they can't keep up this going. Like, it was obvious that Ukraine isn't going to win. And I said this on my channel. I said that I'm skeptical that it's going to win. I think like the best case scenario is that they manage to keep most of their country intact, and the borders that the conflict are right now is going to be what remains. And this is going to send a message to Russia that if in the future they want more territory, well, more people are going to have to die for it. Something that Russia may actually not be very happy to do. Whether if they just are allowed to take land after land after land, they get emboldened. And so the European Union is not invited at the table. I mean, okay, the European Union can always choose to support Ukraine, which would be the dumbest mistake ever, but like, sure, I mean, if you want to pump trillions of dollars and send soldiers and manpower and all of that as an individual state, I mean, you can, but I don't think it's a good idea, because if the European Union combined with the United States have spent so much, and this is the current result after so many years, well, without the United States, are you going to actually accomplish victory? I mean, it's simple math, right? Like, just... But yeah, I think like a lot of people from the EU, they just don't understand the reality on the ground. I mean, if Zelensky himself is willing to give the natural resources to Trump, then he probably knows that, well, yeah, it's not sustainable. Because, you always have, like, a fog of war. As I mentioned before, like, you have channels that are like, oh, the green t-shirt. And then you have, like, the other channels that are like, Ukraine is going to enter Moscow. So, there is a fog of war. Like, it's very difficult to know what's actually on the ground. And what I like to see is, like, the reaction of the leaders. So, like, back in the day when Zelensky refused any type of peace negotiation, well, it told me that he is fairly certain that he can hold out. And he did hold out for like 2 or 3 years. I mean, to be honest, like Russia lost a lot of prestige. To be getting cocked by such a small nation, when Russia was at the time considered to be one of the strongest militaries in the world, and to be unable to like dominate your neighbor, I mean, come on. And yeah, the neighbor did get help from the West, but so did Russia get help from China, from North Korea. And when we take into account the massive size of the country, it's laughable. Like, its international prestige has been crippled. And again, they lost Syria. I think this is actually a huge blow to the Russians. Like, okay, they lost Syria. They lost the lives of so many young people. They did manage to gain some territories, sure, but they lost the international prestige. Like other nations don't fear them anymore. And so it's also going to be interesting to see Putin's approval ratings after this peace, because it looks like a peace that's, is not achieving the initial objectives that he set out to do. The border with NATO has actually expanded rather than shrank. I mean, yeah, like, sure, Ukraine isn't going to get into NATO, but, like, other nations did. So the NATO border is a lot larger now. I don't see how Putin can call this a victory. Meanwhile, the Americans, yeah, sure, they spend taxpayer money, which apparently they're going to get back through the rare earth minerals. But, like, not a single American soldier has died there, so... The Ukrainians, yeah, like the Ukrainians did manage to suffer heavy losses, but they managed to hold Kiev. They managed to hold a lot of their cities. And so, like, when you look at it from the zoomed out perspective and you ignore all of the propaganda, the losers seem to be Germany and Russia. We'll see how this peace goes, even if it happens. People are upset that Ukraine isn't invited. To be fair, though, it's not without historical precedent. Usually the great powers negotiate without inviting, like, the smaller nations. And so what will happen, most likely, is that Ukraine is going to be presented with a peace offering deal, which they can sign or they cannot. If they don't sign, I'm pretty sure that Americans will withdraw support. And maybe, if the Ukrainians have support from the European Union, if they actually have the will to fight, then they can carry it out longer, and, it's going to be up to the generals to make the decision if the reality on the ground can justify the extra conflict. We'll see. Personally, I think that they will accept the deal. I think that the way Trump talked after the phone call and he invited Putin to the White House, yeah, I think we're going to see peace. The way it's going to be shown is very interesting. We'll see. I wonder if they're actually going to do what Trump initially said, that European peacekeepers are going to be held in a demilitarized zone between Russia and Ukraine. Because if you don't invite Europe at the negotiation table, then yeah, it's kind of difficult sell to get them. But maybe he can talk to individual nations. Like maybe he can negotiate with the UK separately. Like that would actually be hilarious if Trump negotiates with individual European states without the European Union. Because at the end of the day, the European Union is a trade agreement. It's not a military agreement. So like, why does he need to negotiate with the European Union when he wants to send Polish troops in a demilitarized zone? No, he will negotiate with Poland. In fact, I don't even know if the European Union has the authority to demand, like, nation states to send troops there. And so maybe this is why they're not invited to the negotiations. Anyway, right, let me know what you guys think. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.